How's my hair look?
Yeah.
How'd you get it to look like that without the salons being open? That's what I want to know.
Vegan, all vegan, great byproducts.
All right, so we're live, and we already have 50 people joining us. So we're filling up rather quickly here. I'll give it just a minute because I think we're going to hit our 100 attendee limit in about 5 seconds. So thanks for everybody who's joining. We really appreciate it, and looking forward to just a fantastic event tonight. Kathy made it in. I'm glad to see that. That's awesome. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about Petit Verdot. First, I'm going to take about 5 minutes and do a very boring presentation with a little history of Petit Verdot and talking about Petit Verdot in Virginia. And then we're going to get to the fun stuff. We're going to actually talk to our winemakers and winery owners about the grape and how it grows in Virginia. If you have any questions, definitely ask because we definitely want to get them answered. We've got a whole bunch of experts here, and our technical support, Erica, will be looking at the questions and flagging anything that we need to ask away. So first I'm going to start with a little bit about Petit Verdot. So as you all know, today is Star Wars Day. So in honor of that, today is Petit Verdot, and it's Virginia's New Hope. I want to welcome our panelists. We have Josh Gerard from Gerard or Gerard?
Gerard.
Gerard from Breaux Vineyards, Katie Henley from Casanel, the great Lew Parker, who everybody knows and loves, and Ben Renshaw from Chains North. And funny story, Ben, I've always been a Bordeaux person, and so I've always thought of Petit Verdot as a blending drink. But about 8-10 years ago, you cornered me in your vat room, and you said you have to try this wine. It's amazing. And I was like, I never turned down a free glass of wine. And it was your first standalone Petit Verdot, and you were absolutely right. It was incredible, even just as young as it was absolutely amazing. So it was the first time I had a standalone Petit Verdot. And I've been hooked ever since. So Ben, I owe you a thanks for getting me hooked on this as a wine. And
awesome.
For all of you watching this, please tell us what you're drinking tonight. We definitely want to know. We want to know which local Virginia wineries you are supporting this evening with your wine. So send us pictures. And if you post pictures on Facebook, please make sure you tag the winery so they know you're drinking their wine. So Petit Verdot literally translates to little green one. So it's basically the Yoda of grapes. That's 2, or actually 3, because you all are Jedi High Council tonight. So that's your 3rd Star Wars joke for the evening. No one's really sure about the origins of Petit Verdot. It is believed to have originated in Italy, and the Romans bought it to France from Italy. Some speculate that Petit Verdot was one of the grapes in the famous Falernian vintage, which was the vintage of the century in 121 BC. So if you're familiar with like Bordeaux and Burgundy, you'll often hear about the vintage of the century, which happens like every 5 years. Well, this was apparently the same thing in ancient Rome. In fact, this wine was supposed to be so good that there were poets that were writing poems about it 100 years later, when there's no way it wasn't vinegar, but they still wanted to talk about it. At one point, Petit Verdot was more widely planted in Bordeaux than Cabernet Sauvignon. So you can't talk about Petit Verdot without talking about Bordeaux, because Bordeaux is kind of what made it famous as a blending grape in the modern world. Unfortunately, between the phylloxera attack in the 1800s and the frost of 1956, Petit was almost completely disappeared from Bordeaux, but it started to come back in the 60s and 70s, and now it accounts for about 1.5% of all plantings in Bordeaux That's 1,500 hectares, or, you know, if you're here in the U.S., 3,700 acres that are under vine, almost entirely on the left bank. There's very little Petit Verdot on the right bank. Even though it's used in small quantities, Petit Verdot is still very important in Bordeaux. In fact, the Baron Rothschild of Chateau Lafite Rothschild said that the 1% of Petit Verdot that is in their wine is what makes the wine Lafite Rothschild and not something else. Petit Verdot's been around in Virginia for a while. Ned Ringwood Boyd, the director of the Virginia Wine Marketing Office, said that Petit Verdot has shown that it ripens well and has resiliency in Virginia's climate, much more so than Cab Sauv. It is also a little more flexible with being planted in numerous soils and elevation. So Virginia wineries are using it more in their Meritage blends and also as a full-bodied standalone wine. Virginia has 196 acres of fruit-bearing Petit Verdot vines planted throughout the state. It also has 102 additional acres of non-fruit-bearing vines planted. So the grape is continuing to grow in popularity. I clarified that with the Virginia Wine Board because that's what it seemed to me, but I couldn't imagine why you would have a whole bunch planted that weren't. Compared to 2007, when there were only, compared this to 2007, where there were only 80 acres of Petit Verdot under vine and 21 acres of non-fruit bearing vines. So it's grown very rapidly over the last 13 years. If you combine the fruit bearing and non-fruit bearing wines, that puts Petit Verdot as the third most planted grape in Virginia behind Chardonnay and Cabernet Franc. And then Petit Verdot wins a lot of awards in Virginia. So I looked at the Virginia governor's case. So for those of you who are outside of the state, every year the Virginia does the Virginia Governor's Cup, where wineries submit their wines to be tested and rated, and they bring in panels from all over the world, panelists from all over the world to rate the wines, and they are assigned a bronze, silver, or gold, and the best of the best get put into what's called the governor's case. So since 2017, all of these wines have been in the governor's case as standalone Petit Verdot. So that's 4, 6, 8, 10 wines out of 48 wines in that time have been Petit Verdot, but a whole bunch of the other wines that were in the governor's case are blends that include Petit Verdot. Octagon is one that includes Petit Verdot, and a number of the other blends that have won awards have definitely been very popular. So anyway, that's kind of the view for tonight, or that's kind of my spiel for tonight. So now I kind of want to go around and have our panelists do the talking, because that's basically what we all take care of. So Katie, I'm going to start with you, and just tell us who you are and what you are drinking tonight.
You would start with me, Alan.
Uh-oh.
I think somebody's music is on, so if they want to mute their mic.
I got it.
Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Henley, and I am the winemaker for Casanel Vineyards Winery. I've been here since our entirety. We started in 2006 as a family. We bought the property, and we opened our doors in 2000.
Great. Ben?
Ben Renshaw, 8 Chains North. I planted my first vineyard on the family farm in 2006. We opened our doors in 2010, and Petit Verdot has been one in the vineyards that I've planted, torn out, moved, etc. Petit Verdot is one that is really kind of been my favorite with Malbec as far as reds go.
Great. Josh?
Josh Gerard. I work at Breaux Vineyards. We have about about 4.5 acres of Petit Verdot planted. They were planted in 2004. We have some on a hillside, a nice slope, and another section is on more of a flat terrain. But if it's kind of deceiving that if you actually look at it, it's kind of on a knoll, and so it's actually pretty well drained. And it's all done very, very well for us. It gets ripe. It's very floral. It turns out really nice for us.
Great. And Lew, no, last but not least, you probably need no introduction, but go ahead and introduce yourself to the few people that don't know you.
Hello, I'm Lew Parker, and as you could probably see from my picture, I'm not a youngster. Willowcroft started commercially planting grapes in 1980, and we're operating the oldest winery in Loudoun County and probably the 5th or 6th oldest in Virginia. I claim to be the oldest continuing winemaker in Virginia, so you could challenge that if you want. Somebody out there probably could challenge that. But we planted Petit Verdot in the 1990s here. I didn't plant it here, but Dean Triplett, who was our operations manager, planted a mile down the road. And we planted it to use it the way the Bordelais were using it, as a blender for increasing color and adjusting acidity. And then we discovered we really liked this stuff. So we planted more in 2001. And we've got just short of an acre of it, I think. And it certainly is a mainstay of our wine production. We not only use it as a blender, but we also bottle it and label it with its own varietal label. So that's our story.
Fantastic. So I'm going to reverse the order here, and I'm going to start with you, Lew, for the next question. And Frank asked this, Frank Morgan from the Drink What You Like blog. And well, again, everybody hopefully knows Frank because he's amazing. Few regions have made a market selling a varietal Petit Verdot, but in Virginia, that seems to be the case, that it thrives well as a standalone wine as well as a blending wine. So that, which kind of leads into my question, why do you think Petit Verdot does so well here in Virginia? And then kind of follow on, and Lew, you kind of answered this part already, do you like it as a standalone? Do you like it as a blend? Do you like it both?
Well, thank you for asking that question. I have to say I disagree with you, Alan, on a couple of things. I really believe that the reason the Bordelais stopped growing large quantities of Petit Verdot doesn't have so much to do with the phylloxera or the frost, but has to do with the fact that they had trouble bringing it to ripeness. Their available sunlight is not quite as good as ours in Virginia, and they had a high risk because many of their harvests would just not get ripe. I've had that experience here. Makers have too. Famously, I guess for me, in I think 2001, we had a rainy year with not much sunlight, and we harvested it in November. The acidity was 17 grams per liter. And I said, I can't make wine out of 17 grams per liter. I'll let it run on the vines. But I did harvest it. I blended it with apple wine to bring the pH down, the pH up rather, and the acid down. And I named it after my cat, Bailey. So I have a wine from 2001 called Bailey's Bluff. But I think that the reason that the Petit Verdot is growing and becoming popular here in Virginia is we've got the sunlight to bring it ripe in most years. And that's my experience with it. I will also say that I think that the Petit Verdot, as wonderful as it is, and as much as I love it, does need and does traditionally have one of the other Bordeaux varieties blended into it, at least in a small quantity. I think it helps the center palate. So that's my answer on your question.
Great. Josh?
Well, I mean, I like Petit Verdot as a blending grape and as a varietal. I think it does well here because we got a lot of heat. I mean, we have heat that goes all day and all night. I would say probably the majority of my red blends have a splash of Petit Verdot in it. Usually, I mean, it depends. And as a straight varietal, I think it really depends on the year. I've done 100%, and I've also done some where I've added back a little bit, you know, depending on the year, a little Cab Franc or Merlot. Really just kind of depends how it turns out that year. And it depends how it falls on the palate and how the tannins are structured, and how I want to kind of see how it works in different blends and how other wines work into the Petit Verdot itself. But I think Petit Verdot is a great grape. I mean, it does well. It ripens. You have to wait a little bit, but I mean, I usually have no problem getting it up to, you know, almost only 24 bricks, and in the good years, it's even goes further. You know, it's just, I mean, it can be a little simplistic in the aromatics and on the palate. But I mean, that's where you have the room to blend in other components to kind of add the complexity. But I really like working with Petit Verdot.
Sounds like you
Josh,
agree with me about the palate.
So Josh,
Yeah.
for those people who aren't familiar with wine terms, can you explain what bricks are?
Bricks is the how we measure the sugar in the grapes. I guess you could call it a percentage. 24 bricks will, it's 24% sugar.
Got it. So Ben, same question, but I'm going to add something that Kurt Jensen asked us. He said he noticed that Petit Verdot seems to blend very well with Tannat. Any thoughts about why it's a good blending wine with Tannat? And because you grow so much Tannat, you might have some thoughts in addition to what you think about Petit Verdot in general.
Well, since you're drinking the 2009 Tranquility, which is Tannat Cab Sauv, I'll start further back. I think, Josh, you're kind of spot on in most of that. I also planted it. The vineyard at the family farm is just over a half acre. I tend to lower yield my reds more in that 2.5 ton per acre range. And I planted it to be a blending grape. That's, that was the idea. You get color, you get acidity, and you get kind of that darker kind of currant fruit quality out of it that can help some of the softer reds, Merlot, Cab Franc, etc., whether it's a color or a structural issue. I actually don't remember Alan cornering you in the bathroom about this 2010 Petit Verdot.
That VAT, little different.
But it was 2010 that I realized that, wow, after it had been in the barrel for, I forget it, 12, 14 months, I thought, wow, this is really, I don't want to blend this away. It's got a lot of complexity. I think 2010 was a unique year. Josh, you're right. I think it does tend to be a somewhat linear grape insofar as the palate goes. So I've kind of changed what I've done with my barrel regimen. So most of my my Petit Verdot is done in a heavier toast. I like the Sanso barrels for it, which, a medium toast Sanso is a heavy toast plus in some other cooperage's portfolios, I would guess. But I think that I'm more of an old school winemaker. It all happens in the vineyard, and then you just come in and you make the wine. And so I think patience in the cellar has a lot to do with it. So I'm drinking the 2016 tonight, and that spent over 2 years in the barrel. It's not a wine that you can rush to market. You have to give it time. And that allows, and what I've seen, it allows it to open up and kind of go a little broader on these linear kind of descriptions of the wine. Why does it go with Tannat? I don't know. I feel like Tannat is a very linear grape. And wine. If you haven't tasted Clyde Housel's at Hidden Crofts, taste Clyde's tonight. He has one that is, or a couple that are world class. Why it pairs with Cab, I can't answer that question. They're both very strong, very dark fruit, dark red fruit kind of grapes. The Petit Verdot is a tiny grape, you know, so your skin to pulp ratio is different from Tannat, which is a huge grape. And yet they still have similar kind of very strong phenolic qualities, but they do play well together. I agree with whoever posted that.
Got it. And Katie, same question, but I have two additional questions for you. One specifically for you. So John Murphy is drinking a Casanel 2014, and he wants to know what you're drinking, which, by the way, next time we go around, everybody tell us what you're drinking tonight, because we all want to know that. And then Michelle Shorter wants to know what the recommended cellar time for Virginia standalone Petit Verdot is. So how long should you age it before you open it and drink it?
Cool. Tough questions all around, guys. Wow, lots of questions. First question I will answer. I am drinking our 2016 Petit Verdot, which is our current cellar that we're tasting right now, or not tasting, but selling right now. Hi to John Murphy. 2014 was a fantastic vintage. That was actually one of the first vintages that I was the winemaker here at Casanel, so very biased. I like that wine a lot. But kind of like getting into the whole Petit Verdot question, you know, a lot of people like, what is it about Petit Verdot that makes it unique to Virginia, makes it unique to the East Coast, to Casanel in particular? Honestly, it's two things. It grows really well here. Again, you know, everyone's touched on it. Ben, Josh, and Lew, you guys have all touched on it. It's very small. It's very resilient, which makes it really kind of Virginian in that aspect. You know, we're very self-reliant Virginians. But it's, again, with that ease of growing, it comes so much versatility. I know I'm not the first person to say that, you know, here at Casanel, we do employ it in our blend, but we also do 100% varietal. We also just are about to release our Rosé of Petit Verdot. I've seen people use it in cool styles, in sparklings, pet nats. I know Kathy Wiedemann, if you're out there, there's somebody in New York doing a Petit Verdot sparkling. I can't remember. It's just so versatile, you know, like it's almost like Chardonnay in your portfolio. You can kind of mix it and match it and move it around to make sure that everything kind of sings up on that elevated note that you need your portfolio to operate on. So
Cool.
it's definitely one of my favorite varietals to work with, for sure.
Okay. So Stephen Bernard asks, while Petit Verdot is, Stephen Bernard, for those of you that don't know, is a winemaker at, why am I blanking? Erica, where is Stephen, the winemaker?
Keswick.
Thank you. Yes, Stephen Bernard's the winemaker at Keswick Vineyards. He asked, and Katie, I'll start with you and we'll go around again. While Petit Verdot is regarded as a wonderful blending grape, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, what other varietals blend well with Petit Verdot? So we know we've talked a lot about it being a standalone here in Virginia. We talked with Kurt's question about Tannat, but what other grapes blend well with it?
Let's be honest for a minute here. Anyone who's topping their red wines here, they're usually topping with Petit Verdot. Like Ben and everyone mentioned, like it's got the tannin to it. It's got the color that we need. It has every aspect of a great red without being overbearing when you blend it. Does that make sense? So, you know, if you've got a softer Merlot, you can add a little bit of Petit Verdot in there to give it a little bit. Personally speaking, I like a little bit of Petit Verdot in our Bordeaux blend. We're experimenting a little bit here at Casanel, so I do have a Petit Verdot Carmenere that I'm looking at, but nothing to get to bottling stage yet. So
And I do have to say, that's one of the great things about Virginia winemakers and wineries in general is there's no fear of experimentation.
Yeah,
Lou,
why
you
not?
mentioned earlier that you blended Petit Verdot with an apple wine, which is something I had never heard of before. But the fact that Virginia winemakers aren't afraid to do that, and I think part of that is when you still have to pay your mortgage, and so you have to rescue a vintage. You MacGyver together whatever you can to make a good wine. So I think that's the difference between selling 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 cases a year and selling 100,000 cases at $1,000 a bottle at Chateau Margaux is you have to be resourceful.
Yep.
So Ben, same question to you. What do you think are good blends for Petit Verdot?
Typically, I'm blending it with my Merlot. They're on the same site, which is fairly sandy, and the Merlot tends to be lighter in color and a brighter red, more of like this raspberry kind of red fruit quality, versus this dark kind of dusky, tannic Petit Verdot, which goes well together. But I think it does play well with a lot of things. But before I go on, Lou, I want a bottle of that Petit Verdot apple wine, and Katie, I damn sure want a bottle of that Petit Verdot rosé. I don't grow enough Petit Verdot to do it as a rosé. I'm down to that about half acre. I'm drinking the 2016, which was, I had a vineyard south of Purcellville where I had about 2.5 acres of Petit Verdot, and I got one vintage out of it before world events happened. And I'm so happy with what it does that I want to be able to make it as a varietal, and I'd love to be able to make a couple 300 cases a year as a varietal. But I need it as a blend still. I have Cabernet Sauvignon in the ground as well. And I think that is more of a blending wine for me in Virginia, because I think that it gets the structure and you can get some color out of it, but I'm not sure that you can fully ripen it every year. Petit Verdot, you can look at it in the middle of September and it still isn't finished with veraison, and you think, my God, this block is cooked. It's been a wasted year. And lo and behold, like Josh says, even in an average year, you can get 24 bricks out of this stuff, and just bleeding color and character. I saw a question pop up asking, what is a linear wine? A linear wine is one that's very got blinders on. It's very focused on one thing, and Tannat, Petit Verdot are like that to me, where it can be very acidic and very limited in the palate. It doesn't expand as much. It's there, and it's there like a steel rod, as opposed to something like a Merlot that is softer and a little more brighter, and can use some structure behind it.
Yep, I agree with that.
So Josh, obviously, you in Virginia, I know you have a long history as a winemaker in Virginia. You got your start at Boxwood, which is famous for their blending. What do you think about Petit Verdot as a blending grape? What does it blend well with?
I think it can blend well with all the Bordeaux varietals. Like for me, I found a little bit in Merlot. Usually gives a little more tannin structure and a little bit on the finish. And Cab Sauv is really iffy in Virginia. Some years it doesn't do great, and I found that if I max out the percentage, I can blend PV into Cab Sauv. It becomes the Cab Sauv actually becomes more like a Cab Sauv. It has that big tannin structure. It's got the color. It's got the more fruit flavors. So it can do really nicely with Cab Sauv. Cab Franc, I play small percentages with it. I like Cab Franc by itself and its aromatics, and it usually has a good palate in most aspects. So it doesn't usually need that much. In 2018, that garbage vintage, Petit Verdot, actually it didn't come in like 24 bricks, but it was actually had ripe. It had some nice color and it had some really nice fruit. And I was able to blend that with, it was a 66% blend with some Malbec and a little bit of Merlot, and it actually turned out to be a really nice wine. So it was kind of like the saving grace of that blend and that vintage.
So Lew, same question to you. And
Yeah.
an additional one that came in from Janelle Catlett, she wants to know who has the oldest Petit Verdot from Virginia out there, and I think that may be you, but I don't know that we know that for sure. So prior to 2004, just so you know, Petit Verdot in the yearly grape report was listed as other, so it was lumped in with all the other grapes out there. It wasn't until 2007 that Petit Verdot got its own standalone column. So, but Lew, I think you may have the oldest, unless you know of anybody else who planted before you.
I don't know of anyone else that had it before me. So, but I don't think I'm the oldest. I think probably somebody else had tried it before. But as I say, we planted it in the 90s. Here on Mount Gilead. Let's see. Well, I'd like to add a couple of notes. I agree with what's been said here, and this idea about linearity to me is another way of saying that I think Petit Verdot needs to have another Bordeaux variety blended into it to fill out the center palate. I want to talk maybe a little bit. I'm not sure. We got a broad spectrum of people that are into this call. I wanted to talk about Petit Verdot and labeling. I want to make sure that everybody understands that just because Petit Verdot appears on the label, it's called Petit Verdot. There's my bottle, if you can see it. That doesn't mean that it's 100% Petit Verdot. America's labeling laws allow winemaker to blend up to 25% of other varieties into the wine and still call it the labeled variety. So a Petit Verdot labeled may have up to 25% of other varieties in it and still be called a Petit Verdot. So it can be confusing to people that don't understand the labeling law. I'm drinking the 17 Petit Verdot here tonight as we talk. It was a year in which it came in class action. The acids were high, and yet the bricks were high, over 24. So the wine came in, and in order to make the acids palatable, we all have our blending. That's blending with another variety that generally has lower acid. I agree with that. The Merlot is an excellent variety for that. And then, of course, the fermentation itself reduced the acidity. And finally, many of us, I'd love to hear the comments of the other winemakers on this. Many of us put it through a secondary bacterial fermentation, the malolactic fermentation, and that tends to reduce the free acidity, hydrogen radicals, to also reduce the acidity. And for a wine like this 17 that I brought in at very high 10 grams per liter of acid, I used all three of those tools to bring the wine into what I call a palatable, table available Petit Verdot.
Got it. So on a good year like 2017, which I know a lot of wineries made a fantastic Petit Verdot in 2017, including Katie, I know yours is amazing. How long would you recommend somebody lay that down in the cellar before they drink it?
You know, it's really difficult for me. I'm asked that question frequently by people that buy our wines. How long should I age it? It's always a very difficult question to answer. And my answer usually is buy 12 bottles, lay it down, drink one every year, and when it's perfect, drink them all. The answer is that the aging of red wines is always a function of the chemistry, what came in from the vineyard, what the bottling procedure was. In our wines, I generally find, and there's clear exceptions to this, certainly in the Petit Verdot, generally they will improve for 4 or 5 years. After that, they could improve for 10. I have examples in my archives that go all the way back to the beginning of Willowcroft. So those are wines that are 30 or 35 years old. And it then, after a certain amount of time, it kind of goes bottle by bottle. Aging is clearly helped by proper storage, laying the bottles on their side, making sure you monitor them for temperature, and that will advance aging. But all of them go over the hill at some point. I don't care what it is, they go over the hill at some point. But my answer in general would be red wines age better and taste better with aging. My Bordeaux varieties usually age well and usually present well until the 5th or 6th year, and sometimes they go well beyond that. Unlike Katie, we also made rosé out of our Petit Verdot in 2018.
Very nice. Well, you know, I like that you've recovered from that. So we did have a question in there. Somebody wanted to know if you still make your apple wine.
Yes, we made it this year. We hadn't made it since 2013. And our wonderful administrator, Kelly Peck, loves it. And we had a little tank space, and we went and we made apple wine with it, and it's really good. We call it Flaws. And people think of our assistant winemaker, Brian, here. He calls it a kind of a caricature wine, but this is a very sophisticated wine. I would challenge you, tasting our apple wine, to not think it's a very good, high-quality table wine. Of course, apple juice comes in with very much lower sugars. We're talking about a Petit Verdot that has 24 or 25% sugar from the vineyard. Apple juice in a good year comes in with 12.5. And apple juice comes in with a much higher pH than wine. And apple juice comes in with an acidity that's inadequate. So if you're going to have wine and not cider, you have to adjust all of those features. And we do that. And we come up with an apple wine that is very sophisticated apple wine. And I challenge people to come.
That sounds good. Katie, I like that you have a disembodied hand floating in your...
I know. Did you see that? He stole my wine.
How dare he? So first of all, Sylvia Miller from Breaux Vineyards said that she thinks Ingleside has the oldest bottling of Petit Verdot. So that probably answers that question. And then Josh, we had a question come in from, and I've lost who it was. Somebody wanted to talk about the, here it is. It's from Kevin Mosser. Can you share your thoughts on the difference between working with Petit Verdot versus Cab Franc in Virginia?
I mean, the grapes themselves are starkly different. I mean, Petit Verdot is going to throw out 4 clusters per shoot. You know, small clusters, lightweight, loose berries, small berries. Cab Franc is, you know, they can be pretty hefty size clusters depending on the clone. And, you know, I mean, they both get good ripeness. I think if you get some bad weather, I think Cab Franc will be more prone to rot just because they're a little bit tighter cluster opposed to Petit Verdot, which is not, I wouldn't say bulletproof, but it has those loose clusters, so they tend to dry out in those during those rainy periods. I think they're both great varietals in Virginia. So
Ben, and Katie, I'm going to ask you about this because I know you've made a Petit Verdot for a number of years as standalone. Donna Go asked, it looks like in the Governor's Cup there were a lot of 2014s that made it into the Governor's case. So I'm going to extrapolate her question a little bit. She wants to know what made 2014 a good year, but then in general, what makes for a good year for Petit Verdot in Virginia? Obviously not 2018, but 2018 was bad for everybody unless you love rosé. So, Melanie Natoli at Cana was very happy, but for the rest of Virginia, trying to make things although Melanie makes a lot of great wines, but her rosé is especially fantastic. I'll start with you, Ben, and then go to Katie. What makes a good year for Petit Verdot in Virginia?
I was hoping Katie would go first because I don't remember the particulars of 2014. Katie, you're younger, you will.
Age before beauty, Ben. Age before beauty. You go first.
Okay.
Okay.
How about in general, what makes for a good
You
vintage?
can keep that rosé now. Josh is right. The fact that it's a small, loose cluster. Typically, we get these autumn rains. And I mean, you can get a hurricane roll through with 7 inches of rain. Cabernet Franc is typically off the vine by then. That's coming off the 2nd, 3rd, 4th week of September. Petit Verdot is going to hang. And, nature doing its thing with the winds, et cetera, a loose cluster, there are several things involved with it, but primarily, they're small clusters, so they're not laying on top of each other. So they're getting sun, they're getting wind, and that allows it, even in a year like 2018, 2011. Petit Verdot is what saved both of those vintages for me as a blending grape. It still came in with color. It still came in with some sugar. I don't think I was hitting 25, 26 bricks, but it was over 20. And you still get the phenolics out of those skins. As far as 2014 goes, I apologize. I just cannot remember the particulars of that vintage. I don't even know what vineyards I was working that year, but it year in, year out, it's a funny thing. It's for such a late harvest, it's a fairly early bud break. It breaks earlier than my Cab Sauv or my Cab Franc. And it's a very delicate vine, the shoot itself. Right now, today, we had winds up over 35 miles an hour, and thank God our shoots are only 1.5 inches long. But later in May, if you don't have them properly trellised, they can snap right off, and then they're gone. And which can kind of, that 4 clusters per shoot, we'll drop it down to 2. And when you do that, you have much less fruit trying to absorb the energy of that vine, of that shoot, rather than say Cabernet Franc or Cabernet Sauvignon, which has a much bigger cluster and there's more fruit to ripen. So I think that's why, or partially why at least, it does so well for us.
Got it. So Katie, you're our only hope for the 2014 vintage. Do you remember what made it great?
Well, don't Boba fret, Alan.
Oh my God.
Terrible. Okay,
Katie with the dad.
Bad.
So here's the thing. 2014 was a really special year for me. That was my first year here at Casanel under the tutelage of Catel Griot, who is the head winemaker over at Slater Run. So I remember that vintage like it was yesterday, Ben, so don't worry. I remember mostly because I wasn't stressed. It was one of the first years, like aside from the whole stress of being, the person making the wine and calling the shots, and, it was a relatively easy year. We didn't have very many rain events during May, which was great for us. We didn't see a lot of loss at bloom. I know, especially over here on where we are at the ridge of the Catoctin Ridge, we do see a lot of heavy rain events during bloom, which can be kind of catastrophic for, those varietals that are, or varieties rather, that are prone to shatter, like Carmenere. So we are very kind of aware of the Petit Verdot at all life cycles of the grape. But I usually don't worry about it until veraison, post-bloom veraison. We're actually really unique here. We don't spray any sulfur on any of our vines because we grow Norton. And if you're a Norton connoisseur, you know that Norton's very, very highly sensitive to sulfur. So we are one of the, I think there's 4 of us in the state that don't spray sulfur in the vineyard. But kind of speaking to our strengths here at Casanel, we're very small. We only have about 7 acres of grapes that we farm here on the property. We have 3 separate vineyards, but only about 1.5 acres, 2 acres of Petit Verdot all said and done. So when it comes to making the wine and choosing where it fits in the portfolio, we do have a 100% varietal Petit Verdot. Again, we put it in our blend. And just to clarify, we did not make a rosé in 2018, like a Petit Verdot rosé. We did make our Jose rosé, which is like our proprietary rosé, but we actually did barrel fermentations for all of our red grapes here in 2018. So they're not going to be the sad, wimpy little grapes that, little wines that we thought they were going to be. But I think that just kind of speaks to our versatility here at Casanel and also our innovation. We do not like to be told no. Like when it comes to growing grapes in general, it's a pain in the what to grow grapes on the East Coast. But once you get over that little fact and you start to work with the grapes and see, like a lot of people ask, well, why don't you spray sulfur? I've never personally seen powdery mildew here ever in the 13 years that we've been growing fruit at Casanel. So why spray for it? That's just my philosophy and how I feel. I think that everything you put on the grapes, you can taste in the final vintage. So again, kind of have that approach of less is more. And, I don't want to nuke my fruit if you're going to be drinking it later. So we want to have that kind of healthy, forward thinking in our vineyard management as also in our cellar management. So Petit Verdot for me, it's just one of those grapes where I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think it's as versatile as Chardonnay. I think you can make it kind of be the star in each of its own separate components, but also really build up your blends like, Ben and Josh were saying, like lows and things like that. There are some grapes that need a little bit more oomph. And for Petit Verdot, like it really just depends on when you pick it, honestly.
I have to say, I've been following the Virginia wine industry closely for a long time now, and between late frost, hurricanes, wet summers, early rain in August and September, I don't know why anybody would want to own a winery. I love that you all do what you do, and Mike Carroll, from formerly from Leesburg Vintner, now happily enjoying retired life, and we all wish him well, basically said the same thing. He wants to thank everybody for all that you do. He's retired, but he sold thousands of cases of Virginia wines over the years, and it's amazing what has happened in the Virginia wine industry since he started selling wine in 1976. So he thanks you all for everything you do, and I know we all do, because I know I couldn't do it. I would much rather be a distributor, because then I could just, get you guys over the barrel both ways. I think we lost Lew again. There he is. So I have one more question, and this is from Paul Armstrong from Virginia Wine Time. He and his husband Warren are enjoying 2 Petit Verdots tonight. Tell us what they are, Paul, so that we know. But he says they're from 2 different vineyards, but the same year, and they're very different. So, Josh, I'll start with you, and then Lew, I'll go to you with the same question. How does Petit Verdot grow in different parts of the state or at different elevations, et cetera?
how it grows in different parts of the state?
Well, so right. So when depending on whether you're here in Loudoun or in Charlottesville or whatever, is there a difference in the way that it grows? Does that make sense?
I don't know. It grows pretty vigorously. I've been out there pruning Petit Verdot, and you'll see shoots that are 12 feet long. I mean, it's a vigorous grape, and if you don't keep it under control, it'll keep going and going.
Got it. And Lew, I think you said you had it in 2 different places on your property. Is that right?
Yeah, we have it in 2 different vineyards that we here part of the Willowcroft Vineyards. And we grow it on 2 different trellising systems, so one of which I wish I didn't have. We started it here on Geneva Double Curtain, which is a trellis system that instead of having the shoots trained up, they hang down. And we also have it on vertical shoot positioning where the shoots are trained up. I wish I'd never planted the Geneva Double Curtain. I've been cutting it over slowly but surely. But it grows prolifically on both trellising systems. And to the state, if in fact Ingleside grew it first, and they may have, they're in the Tidewater area. I think that would probably be a good area growing Petit Verdot because they probably have a little bit higher average temperatures and sunlight that they have in the peat. So I would guess that the Tidewater area would be good. Across older vineyards and Willowcroft, with a lot of experience. A lot of different. Petit Verdot may well have been one of
Got it. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you all to tell everybody how to order your wine. But before I do that, I asked a bunch of vineyards around Virginia to tell me why they love Petit Verdot. And typical passionate winemaker and winery owner, I asked for 1 or 2 sentences and everybody gave me a book, which is awesome. So I just want to read off a couple of these great things about Petit Verdot in Virginia. So at Ducard Vineyards, they grow about 1 acre of Petit Verdot, and they're near the Shenandoah National Park in Madison County. They love it because of its versatility, and they've won a number of medals for it. And so he likes to blend it into their Bordeaux blend, which is Triskel, and they produce only in the best years. And it reminds Julian of the fine wines that they produced back in the native Bordeaux. You can order Triskel and other wines at Ducard Vineyards. They do ship via UPS. They'll deliver it locally, or you can pick it up at their curbside. You can even give them a call if you want to get their wines. Ducard makes some amazing wines, and they were nice enough to send along some pictures of the grapes and their bottles of wine. So they make a standalone as well as the blend. Pippin Hill Farm Winery, they've actually won had their Petit Verdot in the Governor's Cup, but they grow for several reasons, but primarily that the acidity levels are traditionally higher than one would find in other red varietals. This allows it to hold up to the heat and rainfall of the region. It produces, and you guys have talked about this, multiple clusters per shoot. And so that means you get more per average. And you can order their wine off of pippinhillfarm.com. They've got a great little ordering system if you want to have it delivered. Nota Viva, Stephen and Shannon are awesome. I love them. Their Petit Verdot is super vigorous, and they're hedging at least twice during the summer. You guys have talked about how to have it hedge and keep the canopy balance. And it's the last varietal come in. They've had a couple of vintages where we've been letting it hang fully to develop the flavor profile while worrying about the canopy shutting down and dropping leaves. The berries are so small and the skin to juice ratio are much higher than others, and they're doing manual punch downs. The winery has always been a challenge, more like mixing heavy concrete than punching down caps. It's quite a workout. But they make a fantastic Petit Verdot. You can get it online for delivery, or you can pick it up at the winery. And they're also at the area Wegmans. This is their wine, the Excelsis, because at Nota Viva, everything is music related, which is very cool. And if you get a chance, once social distancing ends, you definitely need to go to one of their wine, music, and pairing sessions. They're always really, really enjoyable. Knight's Gambit has been growing Petit Verdot since 1999, and they're continually pleased with its performance in the vineyard and the glass. And this is sort of a perfect example, and you guys touched on this a little bit too. Unfortunately, the frost, which impacted so many winemakers this year in Virginia, hit them hard. They lost most of their Chardonnay, Merlot, and Cabernet Franc, and they had a lot of damage in their Pinot Grigio. The Petit Verdot had some frost issues with advanced buds, but by and large survived and should produce a decent crop. And again, Knight's Gambit Vineyard is, you can order from their website. They make a fantastic Petit Verdot. I highly encourage everybody watching, ordering wines from your local vineyard and, help keeping them supported during the downturn. So Katie, I'm going to start with you. Tell everybody how they can get your wines, and I know you guys are doing porch delivery because I've used your porch delivery before, which is pretty awesome. So tell everybody how they can get your wine.
So pretty much we're doing what everyone else is doing right now under Executive Order 53. We are allowed to do curbside delivery. We do free delivery within a 10-mile radius, and we also do shipping on our website through Vino Shipper. So you can get our wine 3 ways, but the easiest way is to call us at the tasting room. It's 540-751-1776, and we can prepare your order for you.
Got it. Ben, how about you? How can everybody get your wine?
Best way is to go online, 8chainsnorth.com. You can do it, pay for it there, either pick it up at the winery. We will deliver it anywhere within a 50-mile radius. It's probably going to be my son that's doing the deliveries. And I just want to say that when we shut down originally, I don't know, what has it been, 7 weeks ago now, 8 weeks ago, I thought doom and gloom. It has not been easy, but I have been absolutely floored with the amount of support that we have gotten, our local, very small restaurants have gotten, and it means more than you can imagine for keeping us going. We still have guys in the vineyard. We still have to put fuel in the tractors. We still have to pay the mortgage, and the support has been absolutely phenomenal. And I'm hearing that from everyone that I talk to in the industry. So 8chainsnorth.com, you can either come pick it up Wednesday, Saturday, or Sunday, or we will bring it to you Thursday or Saturday, I think is the day we deliver.
So, and I'll tell everybody listening, Ben has a couple of bottles of the 2018 Loco Vino left. And it's fantastic. We grabbed the bottle this weekend, and we downed it with our crab cakes for dinner. So
good answer.
Yeah. Fantastic pairing, and despite the fact that 2018 was an awful vintage, your Loco Vino is just fantastic.
It was fine for whites. We did well with the whites.
Got it. So Josh, how can people get wine from Breaux?
They can order online. We're not doing delivery. We're doing curbside pickup. We're doing shipping. I think it's free shipping on 6 bottles or more. It's also distributed in Wegmans and Total Wine. I think that's it.
Yeah, and a very efficient operation. I've seen the way the cars pull up around the circle there. I've been in the lines myself, and it's nice how quickly and efficiently you guys run.
Yeah.
How can everybody get your wine?
Well, we are, again, I echo, we're getting a lot of support and really appreciate it through this time from our Virginia drinkers. Our website to start with, willowcroftwine.com, will tell you everything. Our telephone lines are open for orders, 703-777-8161. We're answering, we're taking order. We're delivering free within 12-mile radius of the winery. You can have it shipped. And we're also members of Reno Shipper. So if you're not in the state of Virginia, we could ship to you in 31 states. Directly click on the website and we could ship it to you anywhere in 37 states.
Sounds good. So before we go, Ben, we've had multiple requests. People want to see your dog.
Axel, come here. Come here. Come here.
There
This
you
is
go.
Axel.
We can't have a Zoom call without somebody showing off their pets. So
Yes. Axel's he's a baby. He's 8 months old. He is learning to be the chief groundhog caretaker, as it were.
can you send him over to our house, because our garden is getting eaten alive by something this year. So first I want to thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. I know you have vineyards to tend to and families to tend to, so I appreciate your evening. And I want to thank everybody that joined the webinar. As I said, the recordings will go live on YouTube, and we'll email out everybody a link to that. Anybody who wants a copy of the slides, please email me, and I'm happy to send them to you. I don't want to send a 6 meg PowerPoint deck to 120 people that registered for this. So if you want your slides, please send me an email. I'm happy to send them to you. And again, thank everybody.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yep, good night. Good night.
Everybody stay safe and drink local wine. Cheers.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Good.